Happy Friday and welcome to the Green Room. We're here with Disrupt TV, and of course, we got our amazing producer, Elle. Thank you so much. And of course, my co-host, co-founder, Vala Afshar. And we always introduce our guests in reverse order. I'm going to start with Jeff. So where are you coming in from? What are we talking about?
Well, I hope what we're going to be talking about is the latest book that I've written with my co-author, Steve Goldbach. You were kind enough to have us on for one of our previous books, and though it was never the intent, we've just finished our accidental trilogy. So the latest book is called Hone, came out in October, and I look forward to diving into it.
I know something about trilogies. We'll have to talk to Vala about that another day. Simon, where are you coming in from? What are we talking about today?
Hey Ray, hey Vala, hey Ellie. Simon Paris, dialing in from London, England. So it's Friday evening for me, but delighted to be here. I'll talk about whatever you want to talk about, but I think we're going to go in the direction of enterprise software, AI, ERP, people-centric industries, the journey so far, but whatever you'd like to cover.
Oh, definitely. And thanks for cutting into your pub time. So with that, we're going to go back to Elle, do the count, and we can start from there.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us on Disrupt TV. My name is Vala Afshar. I'm the Chief Evangelist at Salesforce and your co-host for the next hour. We welcome you to follow us on X at Disrupt TV Show. Send Ray, myself, our distinguished guests, your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them live. It's my pleasure to introduce my co-host, Ray Wang. He's the CEO, founder of Constellation Research. He is the best-selling author of Everybody Wants to Rule the World. I see Ray on TV, it feels like every day. He's a regular television news contributor on Fox Business, Bloomberg, CNBC. He's perhaps one of the top futurists to follow on X at RWANG0. Welcome, Mr. Wang, to Disrupt TV.
Hey, thanks a lot with my amazing co-host, Vala Afshar, the Chief Digital Evangelist for Salesforce. He's also the author of multiple books, including Boundless, Autonomous, and maybe a new book. This is a new mindset for unlimited business success, a #1 seller, and Autonomous is now the operating system and Bible for the leading businesses in an agentic era. So executives around the world pay attention to every one of his inspirational and innovative tweets. And more importantly, when he's not keynoting, leading events, or speaking about the future to Salesforce clients, he's out there talking on Bloomberg, talking on ABC, and more importantly, writing insightful analyses from this podcast and others on ZDNet. So with that, who do we have to kick it off together?
We are grateful because we always have an opportunity to have some of the best and brightest CEOs come share their wisdom with us. And today we have Simon Paris, CEO of Unit 4. Unit 4 is a global enterprise software company providing AI-powered enterprise resource planning, human capital management, and financial planning and analysis solutions for people-centric organizations. As CEO of Unit 4, Simon's priority are to drive value, engagement, and results for their customers, their partners, employees, and stakeholders, and drive long-term sustainable SaaS growth. Simon is a passionate believer in the principle of doing well by doing good, and a firm believer in how technology and software can have a positive impact on people's lives. Welcome, Simon, to Disrupt TV.
Thank you, Vala. Thank you, Ray. Great to be here. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Hey, we're really excited to talk to you because you're a serial CEO. You're a lover of the craft of enterprise software. And you just recently moved from Finastra to Unit 4. Not that recently, but recently enough. And so, you're seeing a shift in how software is operating, what customers are looking for. And so what have you learned from that shift from Finastra to Unit 4? It's definitely some lessons learned that you can bring to an ERP company, but also this change and shift that's going on as we enter this agentic era.
Yeah, no, great question. I think you can answer it in two ways. One is what's changed, but what's the same? So I'll start with
Yes.
what's the same. So what I find to be the same is everybody is looking to be part of that ennobling purpose. So one of the things that
Hmm.
attracted me to Unit 4 was this beautiful but very simple idea of giving time back for what matters most. You mentioned ERP. Nobody
Yep.
wakes up in the morning saying, hey, let me go to the ERP system. I can't wait to log in. No.
Oh, I must
What
be
they
the
want,
only one. I must be the only one.
well, maybe there's two of us. Maybe there's two.
Okay, there's two of us. There's two of us.
So what we think about is, hey, what is our bold ennobling purpose? So Vala, you mentioned people-centric industries. What does that mean? That means we focus on things like not-for-profit organizations or higher education or public sector or professional services. So what would it mean if we can give time back for an educator, or time back for a civil servant, or time back for somebody working in a professional services context, an architect, an engineer, you name it? Well, wouldn't that be a great thing if they had more time to do what matters most in their work? And that's how we think about ERP going forward. You shouldn't go to it. It should meet you where you are at. And that might be in a mobile application. That might be in your Teams application. You might be a casual user. But the idea is that kind of proactive, intelligent system of reasoning that's truly ambient in your life, giving time back for what matters most. That's what excited me about Unit 4. Now, that bold ennobling purpose, I think, is true in Unit 4, is true in Finastra. Doing well by doing good in that context is financial services. I guess what's different to your second question, Ray, is,
Mhm.
this is a very European-centric company. 85% of what we do is in Europe, but it's nonetheless global. So we're growing rapidly in North America, Canada, United States, also out in Asia as well. So having a lot of fun. 1 year in, just a little bit less, but enjoying it.
That's amazing. When you go to your website at Unit 4 and you talk about mission, innovation, and user experience, the commentary around the innovation is a strong emphasis on what you call self-driving ERP and how AI and low-code flexibility can reduce manual work. In a way, this is how you give time back, precious time back to your stakeholders. As you know, the author of a book called Autonomous, anytime I read self-driving, I sit up. I'd love to know a little bit more about how you're guiding the innovation roadmap to be more intuitive, to be more proactive, to have a deeper contextual understanding of your stakeholder needs. And ultimately, that's how you're going to give them back precious time.
Yes, yes, yes. So the way we think about it is we remind ourselves that there are 5 generations of people working in the workforce.
Wow.
They have very different skills. They have very different skills, very different biases, very different experiences, but they have one attribute that's always the same. All of the 5 generations can have a conversation. So what we think about is, how can we have a conversational experience engaging with a complex system of record in the way that's completely natural? So let's say you and I, Vala, were in Teams. I can chat with our advanced virtual assistant, we call it AVA, advanced virtual assistant, and say, hey, wait a second, can you help me set up a project for a new client? I'm going to need 8 resources. They need this kind of profile. It kind of looks like this other project that I had. Can you go ahead and set that up for me in the ERP, please? And then I can say, hey, can you find resources that I have that are available, might become available, that speak these languages, that have that kind of experience, and check their calendars and see if they're available. So I can have a purely conversational experience with a system of record that's becoming a system of reasoning that doesn't require me to go anywhere. I can do it wherever I am at. It's truly ambient. It's self-driving in that sense.
That's amazing. So Ava is now a teammate for your customers using Unit 4, and together you can. This is Tony Stark and Jarvis building the together. It's amazing.
Yes.
I that's how I envision powerful use of AI in business. We all could use our own Ava or Jarvis. So that's great.
And to your point and your book and your background, as you know way more than I will ever learn about agentic AI. Ava is also that orchestration layer of what happens underneath. So, hey, do you want me to submit these 2 timesheets for you, dear consultant, for the 2 projects that you've worked on? They kind of look like this. Would you like to approve? Or, hey, your project's running a little bit hot. I found a resource that's available. They're compatible with the requirements in the language. Do you want me to deploy him or her? And it won't affect your project financials. So it's also an orchestration layer of the agentic capabilities that sit underneath, but you don't need to be exposed to it. You don't need to build them. You just engage through conversation.
That's a great point, Simon. I mean, this is one of the things that one of our analysts, Mike Nee, talks about, that semantic layer, that context, it's coming to life, which allows these ambient experiences to pop up, right? And we're getting to a point where, I mean, you have exponential efficiency, but infinite possibilities. And these two things are allowing us to really get to conversations, context, and, you know, the whole notion of a flow doesn't exist anymore, right?
Right.
There's no beginning or end to a flow. I mean, you start and just keeps going wherever you want. And that's really the power behind this. And so when you think about, you know, what the long-term vision for enterprise software, like, where do you see that future headed? Because it's not the old transactional system, but it's definitely, you know, we don't throw that away, but we're doing even more with it.
Yeah, that is a great question. And I think on the one hand, Ray, it's maybe terrifying. And on the other hand, it's also incredibly exciting. You know, Satya Nadella used to talk about this idea of the great collapse, which is the idea that all user interfaces will collapse behind a
Yes.
purely conversational interface. And that's terrifying if you're a branded software company, but it's also exciting, which is why do I want to go anywhere? I want it to come to me in context, proactively for my decisioning with full awareness. You know, you spoke about the semantic data layer. Our chief technology officer, I'm not technical, but the chief technology officer says, Simon, whenever you hear semantic data layer, think meaning. What is the meaning? If we can train these systems on meaning, you know, here's an invoice, it's from a valid supplier, it's for these components, they haven't been delivered on time, they're therefore held up, they were held up by Johan, would you like me to take action? Right? That's meaning there. And it's, of course, to your point, it's coming out of that semantic data layer, but it's meaning that a human can conceptualize in context, proactive, at the time to the person with the right authority, permissions, governance, you name it. That's exciting. And if it's conversational, then all generations, including my generation, can have that conversation.
Amazing insights. And when I read your bio as part of your mission as the CEO, I said, yeah, you know, your goal is to scale SaaS growth and build long-term value. Tell us how you do that as a CEO. You know, and it's an area that you're very passionate about. Obviously, all CEOs deeply care about adding value and growing and measuring their success by their customers' success. How do you scale SaaS, and how do you champion long-term thinking and execution so you can deliver value to your stakeholders?
Yeah, well, Vala, I'm kind of speaking to you, who's the expert on this. so I'm a little bit humbled by the question, but you said it, which is we've learned from you and the firm you work with and the books that you've written that it's the obsession with customer outcomes that gives you the opportunity to think, can I capture some of that value I created? Can I point to the outcome we led to? Is it the desire that the customer have? Are they delighted with their experience? It's only from the customer back, because you have taught us over the years, that you can even think about growth and value capture. So it all starts with that customer obsession. What are the outcomes we're driving for the customer? You know, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Why is it meaningful to solve it? And why are you uniquely positioned to solve it for them? So you're absolutely right. It's all about the customer obsession, value back from what the customers achieve.
And when you're you're incredibly accurate in terms of you know, concisely speak to in the 22 years I've worked with Salesforce and for Salesforce, we've always maintained customer obsession, and that is a credit to our founders and leaders. And this approach of working backwards, where innovation opportunities are not in the centers of your business, it's on the edges of your customers' business. How your customers serve their customers is where you find innovation opportunities. But when you're recruiting talent at Unit 4, and one of the most important jobs of a CEO, in my humble opinion, how do you know that the person has that passion for service? Like, what do you look for? Because we have a lot of young CEOs that watch our show, startup founders and young CEOs and entrepreneurs. Can you teach customer centricity? I know coaches with athletes, you say sometimes you can't teach speed, but you know, I believe this is something that you can teach. How do you go in an approach of not only recruiting the right folks at Unit 4, but ensuring you cultivate that servant leadership that you display so clearly to us?
Yeah, so I don't know if you teach it or if you can find it, the germ of it, and then inculcate it. So I was taught in my early 50s that, you know, somebody was on stage and said, hey, you know, every employee in the world is looking for three things. They're looking to be a valued member of a winning team doing meaningful work. And
I
I thought that
love
was,
that. I love that.
I love it. And I'd never heard that until I was in my early 50s. And they said, a valued member. And I said, well, listen, I can make you a valued member through the culture, values, behaviors that we set as a leadership team. I can help you be being part of a winning team where winning means growing faster than the market. You have to show me that you are motivated by purpose of meaningful work. That's one of the reasons why I like Unit 4. Our meaningful work is to give more time to educators, more time to volunteers, more time to consultants, architects, and engineers, more time to civil servants. So it's the meaningful work that we look for. And you can see evidence of it. Show us what you did beyond your school curriculum. Show us what you did in your community. Show us what you did in your society. Show us what you do in your spare time. Show us what matters to you. So it's the meaningful work that we kind of look for. And then if that germ, that seed is there, that you can grow. You can nourish it and grow it.
Simon, that was a beautiful answer. That was, and not something, we had prepared for. I apologize. We go where the conversation goes. That was a beautiful answer. That was great. That was great.
So, hey, but related to all this, right? We're also seeing a shift in terms of industries, and you sat on companies looking at the financial services world, understanding how that shift is happening, and we're seeing more and more growth numbers and in terms of like core AI is taking us, right? That exponential growth that we keep seeing and talking about is starting to take place. From your vantage, like if you're a Unit 4 customer, where should you start, right? In terms of thinking about where AI can help you. I mean, you're talking about freeing up time. You're talking about giving people more meaning in their work. Are there certain playbooks that people work in public sector versus what they're going to do in professional services that have helped other customers? Getting to scale the SaaS growth and that long-term value that you talk about.
Yeah, I'll give you my view, but I'd love to hear Vala's on this topic. So I believe that whatever sector you work in, whatever it is you do, you are human. And the problem is human. And we
Start with
approach
the human.
topic, so it's a human challenge, which is how do we think about adoption? How do we think about empathy? How do we think about what people care about as they think about AI? So for example, somebody my age might start from saying, hey, please don't tell me AI is going to take my job. Whereas somebody my child's age might say, hey, please don't tell me I have to go to an ERP system. They may have completely different thoughts on this. So we start, as always, with the human question, which is what is on the human's mind? And I believe humans go through kind of a loop of thinking, which is awareness, consideration, decision, action. So I start always with awareness, which is, do people really understand what AI is? And the answer is not really. Innovation can only go at the speed of adoption. If you innovate far faster than you adopt, if the flywheels are out of sync, then that's a challenge. So I spend a lot of time on the awareness thing. So we go through learning festivals. We explain how to think about AI, predictive versus machine learning versus neural networks versus generative. We have games, we learn, we experiment safely. We bring every single employee along on the AI learning journey. We train everybody on prompt engineering. We take away the fear factor. We encourage experimentation. So we focus on the awareness approach first. Then we move into consideration, awareness, consideration, decision, action. And then we consider it. We say, hey, why don't we think about use cases in your daily life, professional or personal, in your function, in your team that you can experiment with. And we encourage people to move around that triangle. And once they're aware and trained and thoughtful and they've considered and experimented and tried, they're ready to say, you know what, this does. And we always say, hey, the A in artificial intelligence, let's change the A. We know it's artificial. Why don't we call it A for augment or A for accelerate or A for amplify, right? Why don't we think about that? It's amplifying, accelerating, and augmenting us.
Yep.
And from that, you're ready to go through decision into action in both your professional and personal life. My last thought, then I'll pass it back to you, Vala, for your thoughts, is we encourage to do it a lot. I believe what Satya said, which is you need to use AI 15 times per day for it to become a habit. And when it becomes a habit, then you start to become in the flow. It's not something you go to, in trepidation. You're using it like you use like your mobile device.
I love that. I love flow. One of my favorite words. Flow is all around us. We just find creative ways of disrupting it. So if you can stay in the flow, and athletes understand what it means to be in the flow, the right place at the right time to make the score, and it feels natural. Only time I feel I'm in a flow state in business was when I'm like on a stage giving a talk. Maybe 1 out of 20 talks, I leave the stage and I'm like, wow, I said exactly what I wanted to say. I finished on time. I was in a flow state. So, but I love the words you use. I love the word experimentation. Often we forget that if you know the outcome, it's not an experiment. Like by definition, you need to have the courage to have that beginner's mindset and try things. And
Yes.
and you also mentioned uncertainty, and I think there's a convergence of uncertainty right now, not just with emerging tech and the scary factors of AI and the cool factors, but politics, war, tariffs, just consolidation within industries. There's probably the most level of uncertainty I've felt in my career today than in the past. So leadership through uncertainty is important, and creating a safe space, because I don't believe people are afraid of failure. They're afraid of blame. How do you as a CEO create a safe space at Unit 4 where people recognize that you actually encourage them to experiment, knowing that failure is part of the learning process, especially when it comes to new emerging tech like AI?
Yes, I don't know, but I know a man who does. And his name was Aristotle. I know this conversation can go anywhere, and it's going anywhere. So Aristotle wrote this treatise, and it was called The Art of Persuasion. And he said, if you think about it, and again, I'm paraphrasing a great man from more than 2,000 years ago. But he said, if you think about it, everyone's in the art of persuasion. We're trying to persuade somebody towards something. And he said, if you want to do that, it's a 3-step process. And he said, the steps are ethos, pathos, and logos. And ethos gives us the word of empathy. Pathos doesn't really give us a word, but imagine what could be possible.
Yeah.
And logos gives us logic, which is, if I understand where you're at and I can show you what could be possible, then here are the logical steps from where you are to where you'd like to be. So I think you've always got to start with ethos, which is, I know AI is new. I know it scares you. I know you worry about your job. I know it's a new skill set. I know there's this macro confusion about politics and governance and rights and If you cannot get to empathy, people, you have their attention. And then you can say, but what if I could give you 2 hours a day back for what matters most? What if I could give you a skill set that increases, not decreases, your employability? What if, you go to the pathos of what if, and then say, okay, well, if I understand you and you see this, well, then why don't we take these steps? Why don't we start by general training, more exposure, use of tools, safe guardrails and governance, use cases that you subscribe to in your personal and professional life? So I think that great man, Aristotle, kind of gave us the answer 2,000 plus years ago. Ethos, pathos, logos.
I love that. Simon, have you given a TED Talk before?
No.
You are.
Ray won't let me.
You missed your calling. You are. No. You're an incredible storyteller. You have, first of all, probably 2 books in you, and you definitely have a number of TED Talks. So, wow. I'm going to be watching this again this weekend. You're dropping a lot of wisdom nuggets on us. That was pretty awesome.
Thank you.
Actually, I'm waiting for the Project Aristotle. Humanoid robot.
Ada and the companion Aristotle.
Ava might be the companion to Aristotle.
Exactly. A for Aristotle, in fact. Yeah.
No, that's great. Well, hey, leadership lessons learned, right? A lot of people, you've grown up in the enterprise software industry. We're now, I hate to say it, but like I don't want to be an elder in the industry, but we might be. So what advice can you give people that are getting into the space, and as in terms of enterprise software, because it is changing and it's going to look different in the next 3 to 5 years? What would you say to someone that's kind of in the middle of their career, whether they're in product or they're in sales, or they're in support or marketing? Like, what would you tell them to focus in on? So
if you're early in career entering leadership, I would listen to a few of the things that Vala just said. He used the word servant leadership. I would check out what that means, and it really means your success entirely depends on the success of the team you enable and serve. If you're serving them to success, your success is secondary. It's a consequence. It's a byproduct. You must first and foremost care about the success of your team, the customers they serve, and the customers of those customers. That's why we learn from folks like Vala and the Salesforce phenomenon that's been that obsession. Another word that Vala used was experimentation. If you support experimentation, you must embrace failure. Failure is a beautiful thing. Celebrate it, propagate it, let people learn from failure as fast as possible. We fail as we learn. That's what we do through experimentation. That's what drives innovation and progress. So servant leadership and experimentation are 2 wonderful things. If you can get those 2 on something that you find purposeful, you subscribe to it, you feel that it's part of your calling, it's part of your flow. Look up that word that Vala spoke about. When you get into a flow state, you are your best self. And that's all I can wish for you all.
Amazing
leadership lessons right there
Yeah.
in 3 nuggets.
Brilliant.
Vala, you're right. Simon, I think you got a book.
If I can introduce you to Wiley, let me know. You
Leadership
are
lessons from the front lines.
Unit 4 is lucky
Simon
to have
Paris.
you. Terrific.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for being on the show. Happy holidays. We're here with Simon Paris, the CEO of Unit 4, and one of a long list of CEO jobs, president jobs, and leadership jobs you've had along the way. So thank you so much for spending your time with us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both.
Thanks,
Really
Simon.
appreciate it. Happy
Cheers.
holidays.
See ya.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Wow, that post wrote itself. I don't know what you're gonna have to do there.
This is what happens. We get folks like Simon and Jeff, and they come and expand our minds. And this is why it's my favorite hour of the week is this hour. By the way, I love what I do at my company, but this is my favorite hour.
That was awesome. That was awesome. Yeah, we actually think very similarly. So it was a good choice to have us both on at the same time.
Well, it doesn't surprise us having a 3-time best-selling author who is going to. This is our cleanup hitter spot, where a guest comes and hits a grand slam and brings it all home.
I think you've already discovered that should have been Simon. So maybe that was
well, a leading hitter is also an important position. Yeah. Jeff Tuff, co-author of Hone, How Purposeful Leaders Defy Drift. I love the book cover. I love the color option you have.
I've never seen that color option. Choose between these two. I really don't know.
I love the book. Jeff has over 30 years of experience consulting to some of the world's top companies on the topics of strategy, growth, innovation, and adopting business models to deal with change. Currently, he's principal at Deloitte, where he has held various positions across firms' sustainability, innovation, and strategy practice. Today, in fact, he leads all energy transition and sustainability work globally in the U.S. for clients in the energy resource industrial sector. Prior to this, he led innovation firm Doblin. My co-author, Henry King, was at Doblin, CIO, and was senior partner at Monitor Group, serving as member of its global board of directors. Jeff is a widely sought-after keynote speaker, writer on topics of growth and innovation. He's a regular contributor to some small publications you may know, like Harvard Business Review, Wall Street Journal.
Never heard of
this. He mentioned accidental trilogy of bestsellers books, Detonate, Why, and a Wall Street Journal bestselling co-author of, 2 books, Detonate, Why and How Corporations Need to Blow Up Best Practices and Bring Beginner's Mindset to Survive, which was 2018 Wiley bestseller, and then Provoke, How Leaders Shape the Future of Overcoming Fatal Human Flaws, which was Wiley 2021. He's on a cadence of every couple of years coming up with incredible bestsellers. And now, of course, Hone, which we're going to talk about, his 3rd book with Wiley. Welcome, Jeff, to DisrupTV.
Thank you, Vala, and hi, nice to be here again. And that was quite the introduction. I hope I have as much to talk about as you just had to say about me.
I had to cut your bio short. You've done a lot, but we only have 20 minutes.
So, well, hey, I really appreciate this book in this period of time. And one of the things I was reading the book, I realized that the typical strategic CEO of the past changes with the ability to have the technology of AI. And to me, it feels really relevant right now because what we have is this changing of what we have infinite possibilities ahead of us. With having infinite iterations that are ahead of us. And I think for you, I want to know, why did you feel this is especially relevant right now as well, given the current business climate, technology climate, and changes in the economy?
Yeah, so Ray, you absolutely put your finger on the reality that we need to, all of us as executives, as senior leaders, we need to think and act differently than we have historically. And so there's a theme that runs through all 3 of the books. And by the way, I have a fantastic co-author, Steve Goldbach, who's been with me on this journey. He was unfortunately not able to be here today, but he and I kind of bounce ideas off of each other as we do all of our writing. And everything that we write about, everything that we think we know, we've learned from our clients, from being in client service. And as you probably can guess, at Deloitte, we serve some of the most successful, biggest scale companies and their senior executives in the world.
Yep.
And what we've learned over the last 10 years, watching the front line of what all of these companies do, is that there is a massive, massive gravitational pull for these senior executives, because they're so successful and their companies are so successful, to stick to the playbooks of the past and to learn and to use the lessons that they've learned over time to manage down risk, stay on the path of growth, and essentially continue to propagate the success that they've enjoyed up until this point. The reality, though, as you pointed out, Ray, is that we're living in a very different world now. We are no longer living in a world that is governed by linear change.
Yep.
By definition, we're living in a world that's governed by exponential change. AI is just one manifestation of that. But we have to do things differently if we acknowledge that we're living in exponential change, because we're not going to be able to use retrospective. By definition, data is historical. It is retrospective. We're not going to be able to use information from the past in order to look towards the future. And so Hone is really of the three books. This is the book that is primarily about if you're a senior executive, and it's written for primarily a CEO audience of a big scale successful company, what do you need to do individually differently to deal with that pace of change and to shift the way that you think about the role of strategy and your role in strategy?
And in your subtitle, you very explicitly talk about define drift.
Yeah.
What is drift, and why is it such a big risk for companies?
Yeah, so the metaphor, as you might imagine, comes from the world of boating, and drift is associated with water. I personally love to be out on the water. I do a lot of sailing, and Steve and I were tossing around the idea. The metaphor is all centered on the reality that senior executives have a very different set of steering mechanisms and capabilities than sailors do. Okay, so if I'm setting off on a sailing trip, I generally know roughly where I want to go. I've got a set of coordinates I'm sailing to, or there's a point on land that I'm sailing to, and I head off on that path. I go into it with full knowledge that I'm going to be knocked off course along the way. The waves are going to impact my course, the tide, the wind, but I have the mechanisms in my hands, literally the tiller of the boat and the sheet, the rope that controls the sail, to be able to keep myself on course. The reality is that businesses don't have that. So every CEO probably has in mind an objective or a long-term vision for what they want to do with the company, but their job essentially is to deal with the incoming. And so they may have a great plan where they're headed off down a certain path, but a regulatory shift happens, or a competitor makes a new move, or a new technology arrives on the scene. And what they end up doing is reacting in those situations to those moments. They take care of the challenge, and generally what happens is capabilities and management systems kind of stack on one on top of the other over time as they deal with all of this incoming. Inevitably, what ends up happening is they pick up their head one day and they say, wow, I dealt with all of that, but I'm way off course from where I originally set out to do. And so what that leads to is the desire to transform. And I should just be very, very clear about this. And my guess is this is going to be controversial with some of your audience, but Steve and I don't think transformation is a good thing. We actually think if you need to transform, you've waited too long to act. And you've allowed that accumulation to go on for too long, so that you do actually have to take a very risky maneuver, which is to quote unquote transform your company, to go through some sort of massive scale of change in order to get back on course. We've got data that shows that 70% of transformations fail. And so the question we asked was, how do you increase that? How do you increase the likelihood of success and actually stop the wasted effort, the wasted money, and sometimes the wasted careers that come from failed transformation efforts?
You mentioned wind as the reasons why boats drift constantly as they're heading towards their destination. Have the sources of drift in business changed radically in the last 5-10 years? Are there certain new emerging technologies that have caused drift? Is it culture, talent, processes, or do we have the same common finite set of reasons why businesses drift from their full potential?
Well, so I think the categories have stayed the same, and you just named a lot of them, Vala. You've got your talent system, you've got technologies, you've got competitors, you've got regulators, you've got suppliers, et cetera. So all of those are, if you will, forces from the outside that cause you to need to react. What has changed, I think, is that first of all, there's a proliferation of things within each of those different categories. So we now have access to way more different talent bases than we have in the past. In most industries, competitive models are becoming far more overlapping with, or I should say, clusters of competitors are becoming far more overlapping with adjacent customers and competitors and industries, et cetera. So we now have way more competitors to have to worry about. technological options are, as we talked about before, quite literally, the options are exponential at this point.
Yeah.
And so I would say what has changed more than anything is the reaction time that CEOs and other senior executives have to all those external forces has had to rapidly increase.
Sure.
And just the sheer number of incoming forces that they need to deal with to avoid drift has become almost untenable. And so the unfortunate reality is that it has become kind of okay for most companies to say, you know what, I'm going to set my strategy. I'm going to spend, and this is coming from a career strategy consultant here. So I'm going to spend a bunch of money with consultants, a bunch of time to develop a strategy, and then I'm going to give it to my organization to go execute. And I'm just not going to worry about it for some period of time. I'm just going to go try to get things done. And it's in the process of getting things done that you end up drifting off course.
Yeah,
I think you should write a book called Accidental Transformation, where you're fly fishing and the leeway on the drift throws you into a whole nother industry you weren't even thinking about.
And it has happened.
Yes,
And it's happened a lot. So, but okay, while we're talking about drift, now we have to talk about honing. And let's talk about that in the context of drift, because we're starting to get into the mechanisms of what you're talking about in the book.
Yeah. So if you'll excuse me, the mix in metaphors, I'm going to switch from sailing to cooking now. Okay. And
I love
the
it.
chef.
I love food. I love cooking.
We love food on this end.
Good. Well, and it's, as if you've read Hone, then you know that it opens with a chapter about the chef that actually inspired the name for the book. She's a chef named Flannery. And Steve and I, as we always do, we're very close colleagues. We've worked together for decades, and we spent a lot of time debating how to describe what we thought was an antidote to transformation. And we came up with all sorts of interesting and somewhat ridiculous names for the books. One was going to be Machine Head, you know, the thing at the head of a guitar that you use to tune it. But anyway, we ended up with Hone because at one point along the way, Steve was with Flannery. He's friendly with Flannery, and she was, you know, she had her knife out with the honing rod, and she was doing this before she took the meal. And Steve said, "Why do you sharpen your knife so often? Why do you have to sharpen it before every single meal?" And she said, "Whoa, Steve, I'm not sharpening my knife, okay? I'm honing it." And she said, there's a really critical difference here, because when you sharpen a knife, you're actually removing steel from the blade. It's an act of destruction, okay? And you're exposing a new sharp edge underneath it, but you're actually destroying, in some ways, the knife. And over time, if you sharpen it too much, it wears down, it becomes brittle, it is prone to breaking. And so instead, what we do as chefs, as professional cooks, is we hone as often as we can. And what Hone does, she had a great phrase, and I'm going to get exactly wrong, but she said, what honing does is align all the snaggly bits back into a straight line on the knife. So you're not actually removing steel, you're just realigning the blade in a way that it can serve the purpose that it was originally intended to. And that, to us, really struck us as being an interesting way to describe the difference between transformation, which often is an act of destruction, where you're removing parts of the organization and removing things that you want to stop doing, and instead do what we would argue is the antidote to that, and we can go into that in more detail, but to do the things you need to day in, day out, to keep your management systems up to date, to achieve the things that you're trying to achieve.
We don't know each other well, but this was my book, Boundless. As you can see, one word title, the color green, and my first chapter begins with Chef Jose Andres.
Oh, that's great.
Who talked about distribution is life, which led to the word boundless.
And if that's a Wiley book, we were probably allowed them to save on ink.
Yeah, it is a Wiley book. It's a Wiley book.
You just chose the same. They had to rearrange something.
Yeah.
But
I'm just amazed. I'm just amazed listening to another author with that color option, one word title, and the title was influenced by a chef, and that's exactly the Boundless story. I love that.
We need to talk about favorite restaurants towards the end of this episode.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, my co-author is way better at favorite restaurants than I am. I'm good with the boating metaphors. He's good with restaurants.
No, but David, I think what's really important is we talk about the honing that's going on here. What's making me wonder is, like, how do you reset course? Because I'm going through the book, I get to the end, and I kind of missed something, because I must have been, I don't know. I was like, your book kept me up all night, and by the time I woke up with the book,
hopefully not out of frustration, but
no. How do you reset? When do you reset? Because you do hone, you do set course, but then how do you know when to reset?
So really, the purpose is not to reset, and I want to be a little less hyperbolic here. Every once in a while, you do need to reset. I mean, sometimes it's just impossible to avoid transformations. We're just saying make them far more episodic, make them really a very high bar to be something that you want to go try to achieve. And so the way that we think you avoid the reset, avoid the transformation, is just stay on track. And so to cover our antidote, our prescription in a little bit more detail, first of all, we believe that every company has an elemental purpose. And when we say that, it's not a mission statement, it's not a marketing slogan, it's the long-term reason that any sort of individual, and I love Simon's point about the fact that we are still in a human business, the reason any sort of individual chooses to interact with the company, either as an employee or as a supplier or as a customer or as whatever the role of that individual might be. So that ultimately is, that's the equivalent to that that charted course that I talked about in the sailing metaphor. If you have that in mind, then what we're recommending is that instead of doing what most companies do and what most CEOs do today, I talked about this a little bit before, which is to set a strategy and then give it to a bunch of others to go and execute. Make sure that the senior executives and the CEO himself or herself gets directly involved in the implementation of that strategy, which sounds like a very straightforward thing to say and in some ways an obvious thing to say, but it very, very rarely happens. And so as you probably know, Steve and I are great adherents to Roger Martin's strategy choice cascade. That was a framework that was developed actually Roger used to be a colleague of ours, but back in the days of Monitor Group. And the strategy choice cascade, for those that don't know it, the basic notion is that good strategy is built of choices, and there is a series of choices that are made that are all mutually reinforcing, and it's actually drawn as a cascade. And so at the top of the cascade, and sometimes if you're thinking about how to build a strategy sequentially, you have choices around your goals and aspirations. You have choices around where to play in the markets that you serve. You have choices around how to win, so the business models that you use to go and win in those markets. And then you have choices around capabilities and management systems. The sexy part of strategy is all that upfront stuff. So setting the goals and aspirations, picking the markets you're gonna play in, defining your business models, and that's where most executive teams focus the vast majority of their time, and where CEOs kind of wipe their hands at the strategy. They set the bold vision and they say, okay, we've got that. You guys go execute. The challenge though is that the things get done in the capabilities and the management systems. And so what Steve and I talk about in Hone is that there's a very simple concept behind Hone and behind all of our books, and that is that no change happens of any sort unless someone somewhere changes their behavior. Like that's just that's a maxim of business. If you're trying to drive growth, if you're trying to break trend from where you are today, someone somewhere has to change their behavior in order for that to happen.
Sure.
And so the purpose of management systems, well, let me do this the other way around. The definition of a management system is anything that a company has at its disposal that affects human behavior. So there are formal management systems like compensation systems and measurement systems and KPIs and what have you. And then there are informal management systems. So the questions that are asked in executive team meetings, or to steal a phrase from our first book, detonate the orthodoxies of an organization. These are all the things that a CEO or the C-suite has at their disposal to drive human behavior both inside and outside the organization. And what we argue is that the most effective CEOs in today's day and age, where you can't actually work with retrospective data to make choices going into the future, are those that pay attention to the behaviors that they're trying to drive in their system to execute their strategy, and actually take firsthand responsibility for designing the management systems to affect the right types of behavioral outcomes. And if you think about, and I'd love it if Simon and I were on the same time here, and I could ask a real live CEO how often he thinks about human behavior. My guess is he thinks about it more often than most. But the reality is that's not in the job.
We can bring him back on if he's ready. Simon, nod your head if you're ready. I'll add you to this. I mean, we don't want to catch you up. Are you ready, Simon? We'll bring you in. Okay.
Ready.
We'll bring Simon in. I
thought
First
Simon
time ever in DisrupTV history.
He might have dipped
I
off
thought for sure he was eating his supper at this point, but
he's
with us still.
He's far more disciplined than I am. Well, there you go. If I was sitting in London, I'd be down at the pub right now.
No, I thought I'd listen to Jeff with a glass of wine, but yes.
But that's the best way to listen to it, believe me.
Yeah. No, but to your question, we think about the human dimension all the time, because that's the one constant, is that there are humans in the loop. So I think you've got a very, very good point there. In a world of uncertainty and no data retroactively you can look at, you have to think about direction of travel and bringing the humans along. I'm a great believer
Right.
that the speed of innovation is somewhat held back by the speed of adoption, and that's a human question.
And that ultimately, I mean, the thing that we need to do, and I don't mean to sound like I'm trying to lecture you, Simon, but it's the advice we give in our book, is to stop trying to make decisions via analysis and start trying to make decisions via trial. A lot of what you talked about in your segment.
Experimentation.
Experimentation, yeah.
So
We love the paralysis of analysis. It's amazing. It's like a whole industry in itself.
And we earn a lot of money when there's analysis paralysis because
Yeah,
it goes on forever, but it's not appreciated by our clients.
I was going to say, Jeff, you know, at Deloitte, obviously you have the great privilege of working with some of the best and brightest companies on earth. Can you give us some examples of leaders who know how to hone? Like, who are some of the leaders that are operating not like cooks, but like chefs, applying first principle thinking, understanding the taste of ingredients, and making sure the kitchen tools and utensils are always at their best
Simon,
conditions?
next time we're all in a fourth location together, we'll all get dinner. So we're going to bring you back out.
Yeah, raise feeding.
So
I'm paying.
let me tell you a leader that we profiled in the book, and obviously we need to work only with public domain information here. But I think Jeff Bezos is a great example of someone who, and whether any of these stories are apocryphal or not, but of someone who really got directly involved in the way that norms formed at the company. If you think about the format to the written memos ahead of meetings, if you think about his involvement in the advent of AWS, that was all him getting directly involved in the things that were driving human behavior within the company. They eventually propagated and they just became norms through the company, but one would argue that they would not have turned out that way unless Jeff Bezos had a very clear management philosophy about the things that needed to get done, and then he directly made them happen through the management systems that he had at his disposal. I think Amazon and Jeff, and actually probably many of the companies that you two hang out with as frequently, if not far more frequently than I do, the sort of digital native companies, the actions that we talk about needing to be able to take instead of using analysis to choose an action is what we call minimally viable moves. So it's a term that is a clear ripoff of a minimally viable product. Many people know that from the product development world, where you do a little bit of development, put it out in the world, get some feedback, and then decide what you need to do next. We believe, and I think we've seen it in evidence at our clients, that any sort of management system can be boiled down to its smallest testable hypothesis and gone and take and something that you can go take action on immediately. And so if we can get in the mindset of, let's not worry about analyzing what the right answer is. Let's come up with a hypothesis, go test it, whether we're talking about an HR move or a new product development move. Let's go test it. And if it looks like it's headed in the right direction, great. We'll continue doing that. If it doesn't, then we'll go a different direction. That's the only way that we can work with exponential change and managing in the face of uncertainty.
That's a great example. We had Jeff Bezos' chief of staff, who was called affectionately Jeff's Shadow, on our show. He's the author of Working Backwards. Yep. And he talked about the 6-page memo and how they banned PowerPoint in 2007, and how, the practice of writing long form improved the thinking, positioning, answering the questions of market fit and what it is that we want to actually build to add value. So it's a great example. We have great, both Ray and I, affinity for the process at Amazon and what Jeff and his team have been able to do. Extraordinary, really extraordinary. Go ahead, Ray.
It is. I mean, Colin Breyer's the way he kind of phrased that, it really gets you thinking about where it is. Before we go, I mean, I want to talk about the role of the CEO in relationship management systems. Where do you see that role? Because we're going to see a lot of companies that are built what we call tiny teams, where you're going to have one-person companies that could even do $1 billion in revenue on their own. We're going to see 1,000-person companies take out the large SIs. We're going to see 100-person companies take on software companies, giants that we know today. And so that CEO role is very different than what it was in the past.
Well, everything you just described means that CEOs will need to include, whether they're a one-person shop or because they're in industries that are shifting so quickly, they have to be way closer to the action than is typical today, especially with the big scaled successful companies. And so what Steve and I advocate in Hone is that a CEO actually has to think of themselves not as a strategist or a visionary first and foremost, but as the chief system designer. They have
an operator.
Absolutely an operator, and someone who thinks about human behavior every single day and what it takes to drive the behaviors that are going to make the company successful. Now, there's a way to overinterpret that and assume that we're suggesting that the CEO needs to get in the guts of every single part of the company, and clearly we're not recommending that, but
Nope.
just asking different types of questions and making sure that she understands why one of her deputies is taking their business division down a certain direction, and literally asking, what are the behaviors that you're trying to drive in your business, and what are the mechanisms that you're using to drive those behaviors? That type of questioning over and over and over again not only will draw the CEO closer to the front line and closer to the action, but it's going to lead to the type of change within the organization that Bezos did with the 6-page memo.
Yeah. So Jeff, okay, so I'm a CEO. I just finished reading Hone. My last question to you: what do I do now?
Start putting it into action. And I think honestly, the easiest way to do that is by asking questions. We've reflected a number of times, Steve and I have, how usually completely unintentionally, but really powerful, just the questions that senior executives ask lead to activity. And classically what we see happening, especially at some of our clients, is a group of senior executives has maybe some direct reports in a meeting, and they may be listening to one of our presentations or making one of their own presentations, and one of the senior executives wonders aloud about something, about, geez, I wonder what is happening in this part of the world, or I wonder what would happen if we did that. And lo and behold, that then kicks off 6 months of activity of people running around because they believe that that's what the senior executives were asking about, whereas they were simply throwing a thought out there. It's really powerful what CEOs have at their disposal by, there's a lot of power in the questions that you ask. And so simply asking different questions, asking about the behaviors you're trying to drive, asking about the management systems that are being used to impact those behaviors is absolutely the right first step.
So Detonate 18 and Provoke 21 and Hone 25. Every 3 years, you have a bestseller, and you call this the Accidental Trilogy. Is it really a trilogy, or in 2027 we're going to have another?
I can tell you, and I know both of you as writers, you probably have this sensation. I can tell you that absolutely, definitively, right now, there will never, ever, ever be another book.
Yeah,
and I can also
tell you, make a dinner bet on that.
And I can also tell you that I've said that after each of the other two books. Right. Give me some space, and we'll come back and talk about that.
Oh, shoot. Now I have to write a book. Now I have to write a book, Jeff. Darn you. Now I have to write a book. Jeff Tuff, co-author of Hone: How Purposeful Leaders Defy Drift, and definitely an amazing book, an amazing read. I really enjoyed it. I think everyone should get it on Amazon or where books are sold. And of course, an amazing co-author, Stephen Goldbach. And of course, please send him our regards. So thanks a lot for being on the show. Happy Friday. And thanks for
fun. It was great.
Thanks for helping us hone our skills.
Thank you. Just came out in October, folks who are listening. An amazing book.
Might make my list, Vala. I don't know about you.
You got breaking news? You're going to leak some? You're
might be on my list. I don't know. I was waiting for this. I had read the book in advance of this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm not going to do that. Unlike Ray, I'm not going to leak any of the books that are going to make our list. But that's our next show. Our final show of the year, if I'm not mistaken, but we're going to reveal, like we have the last 2 years, and we have our incredible producer who does about 95% of the work here at DisrupTV. Ray does the other 4%, and I do 1.
2.5.
But we're going to reveal our 25 top books of 2025. That means we're only selecting 1/3 of the guests we've had on the show this year. So apologies in advance to the 2/3 of our extraordinary guests that we admire deeply. But it's a finite list, and this is why Ray and I have been arguing for the past couple of weeks. Or spirited discussions.
Spirited conversations.
Friends don't argue. We just have spirited conversations. But we'll reveal that next week, and we'll also, summary of the year and our lessons learned, and we're going to set the stage for 2026, our 10 years of doing the show. So we're going to solicit feedback from you in terms of how you want
guests who have won the 25 list on our show.
Yeah, that would be again. He's leaking surprise.
If you watch the end of the show, you get some benefit.
Breaking news from Ray Wang. But Ray, your thoughts, just kind of summarizing episode 421 with Simon and Jeff, who literally just drop truth bombs and wisdom nuggets on us for an hour. Your
And
thoughts?
you know what I love is I love when people come on the show that love their craft, right? And what
Yeah.
we're hearing from
Yeah.
Simon is just that understanding of where technology, industry, business is
He's a
heading
TEDx
and what
speaker.
he needs.
He's a
Yeah.
TEDx speaker. Yeah. Yeah.
And what it takes to actually lead an organization through that change and through that
Yeah.
dynamic. I always tell people we are in between those two S curves of what we did in the internet age and what's going on in the agentic age, and what
Yeah.
we did with per seat pricing to outcomes-based pricing. We're sitting in the middle of that, and Simon's leading that change at Unit 4. I got a lot out of Jeff's book, even though I got to talk to him directly, and I think there is this notion, and I do agree with them. I mean, you and I have been evangelizing transformation for like a long time.
Yeah.
And what it is like we're telling people that, oh my God, you are so behind that we had to go shake you up. Right. And
Yeah.
now we're actually on the proactive end of the curve saying, you know
Yeah.
what? Here's what you need to do to just always stay constant and stay in the game and be ahead, like by one or two steps.
This is a
So,
great reminder from, when you talk about world-class athletes don't transform.
no,
World-class athletes maintain a healthy body. They hone their talent, and they do that through constant conditioning. And so health, talent, and conditioning is consistently what athletes do to compete and win at the highest level. It's not transformation, it's
Yep.
ongoing improvement, maybe even a Kaizen approach, incremental improvement in terms of staying healthy, staying talented, and maintaining good condition. And certainly if you're on a team, you're also the fourth dimension of just team chemistry, working together to ensure that everybody can elevate each other. The Ubuntu guiding principles that brought the Celtics their last NBA championship. Or
as someone in
before
Boston
that.
might say.
But
what was nice is,
sorry.
what was interesting in this book,
Yeah.
right? We never talked about the athlete. You talked about a director, a chef, a photographer, a rock band. It cut across all different industries. And I think I love Roger Martin, one of my favorite folks, at Rotman, at Monitor, right? And that management systems thinking, I mean, the OS is now at the hands of a CEO, because in an age of AI, they have the observability, the digital dashboard, the insights, and all the signals coming to them. I mean, that level of fine tuning and control, I mean, so much of this is going to be automated with decision velocity, thousands of decisions done in seconds. And then, of course, you're moving the needle and you're able to experiment as much as you want, without the massive consequences you expected in the past. And you can course correct just in time as well. So I'm really excited about that.
Honestly, maybe one takeaway with Jeff's concept of ability to hone, maybe the CEO is now the chief experience orchestrator.
Maybe.
You want to make sure that you're orchestrating experiences for all your stakeholders, your customers, your employees, your partners, the communities you serve, in a way that you meet and exceed expectations of the people that you serve. So again, this is why Elle is our amazing world-class producer, getting Simon and Jeff on one show. And there's so much Venn diagram of lessons. There's a great overlap for me based on our last two guests and their shared wisdom. So anyway, if it's Friday, it's DisrupTV. Big reveal, 25 books of 2025 next Friday. Buckle your seatbelts, get your popcorn ready, because it's going to be a pretty energized
show. Wild ride, 25. So
thanks everyone. See you next Friday. Bye.
See you next Friday.